earning points and miles for my entire family to go on as many trips a year as we want to is just really hard sometimes. Like if you're just working on a realistic mom budget. What I've learned is that for 2026 example, we have 2 timeshare presentations. They were targeted offers, one's from Hilton and one's from IHG. And what that's going to do is give us 2 additional trips in 2026 to where I just paid the fee, but once we show up, I'm getting all that cash back.
Hey there, points people. You just heard a clip from Joy and Mara, the mother-daughter duo behind SavvyTravelMamas. Mara is an OG of points who started her adventures in the 1990s. She has been to more than 70 countries, all 7 continents, and all 50 states. And Joy is following in her mother's footsteps, taking on her own points and miles journey, making memories with her family. Together, they teach how to travel more for less on a realistic budget. In this episode, expect to hear about how to find timeshare presentations that give out the best freebies, if and when it's ever worth it to purchase timeshare properties, tips for how to get the most out of these promotions without losing your sanity or your entire vacation, and so much more. And if you are looking to maximize your points so you can travel like Joy and Mara, you can request a free personalized tutorial video for your next points trip. Just go to geobreezetravel.com/request. We pick one free tutorial to prepare every week, which you will find in the free GeoBreeze Travel newsletter. So make sure you open our free newsletter every Monday to see if your request was the one that we picked and prepared. And now, on with the show. Hey Mara, hi Joy. Welcome to the GeoBreeze Travel podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
I'm so excited to have you both here and to talk about when timeshares make sense, because I know a lot of people have a lot of different thoughts about those, but there are different ways to make them work with your points and miles strategy and some ways that can make it go very wrong. So we're going to talk about those today. But before we jump into all of that, tell us a little bit about you and how did you guys get into the game of points and miles?
Well, I've been traveling on points and miles for over 25 years. And I just kind of stumbled into it. Didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I didn't know what I was doing most of the time. But I remember the day I called American Airlines and said, hey, I've got this many miles and I want to go as far from my home airport as possible. And that's what I did. So it's just been a learning game for me. And I started before all of the rules got so picky with everything. But it's been a very fun adventure.
She also started before the internet existed, so her beginnings were very, very different. Or the internet may have just been starting to come out, but you didn't have Google. Google didn't exist at that point. So she started off just like reading blogs when they started to come out and mostly on the phone, just calling credit cards and airlines and hotels and figuring it out, which I think is crazy to think about because we start now, we have Google, we have a million blogs, we have a million resources to where we can find out. We have YouTube, we have all these things. And none of that existed when mom started so many years ago. I always like to point that out because that's what's more amazing. When she says she stumbled through, it's literally because there was no guide for her.
What was there to work with back then? Were they mailing you airline charts? Were you hearing radio ads for this? How does one stumble onto this before the age of the internet?
If you're traveling, and my husband had been doing some traveling, and he had been accumulating these points and miles that I didn't even realize at the time existed. Then we went to Puerto Rico one time when Joy was in high school. He paid for mine and for Joy's on points. And then I thought, oh, points? Whoa, this is kind of a crazy thing. So then it kind of started piquing my curiosity and I began to doing a little bit of figuring out. And like I said, when I called the airlines, I had no clue what I could do with those airline miles, but I just wanted to start learning. And at that point, one thing on top of another just started adding up. And then I started getting credit cards. And honestly, it was willy-nilly because there were no rules. I had no clue about credit score. I had no clue what I was doing. I just knew that I was getting all these credit cards. And I literally remember applying for 7 in one day and getting approved for all 7 of them in one day. But I had put it together so that they were low spend, no fee, that we would be able to make that. But it was crazy. You couldn't do stuff like that now, hardly. I mean, I guess you could, but it was just nuts way back then.
What year was that where you got 7 different cards in a day?
Late 90s, early 2000s, right?
It must have been.
I was 16 when we went to Puerto Rico, which means that was like 97, 98. I'm telling you how old I am, Julia.
Women weren't even allowed to get credit cards in those early years. And so once I realized that I could do something like that, it's like, well, man, I'm going for this, you know. I was a couponer before that. So
What were some of the cards that you got back then, which I'm sure don't exist these days anymore?
actually, I still have a lot of them. Of course, it was like going into the stores when you're shopping and they want you to sign up. So I got some of those, which have since I just let them go. I didn't cancel them. I just kind of let them go by the wayside. But I got a very old city thank you card that I had gotten when I'd actually gone back to work on my master's, and I got an offer in the mail for it. And that city professional card is no longer available, but it's still good. And it has the earnings of like better than what Chase Sapphire does. Yeah, it's just crazy the way all that works, but I hang on to whatever I can.
Because a lot of them had no annual fee back then, right? And so hanging on to them doesn't really require that much of annual expenses.
No, I tuck them away sometimes. And if a bank closes it, like, oh, well, I don't really mind that much because it doesn't hurt my credit score.
Over the last 30-some years that you've been doing this, what's been like your favorite promotion that you've ever seen where you're like, oh, that was such a good one back in the day? They don't do that anymore.
Well, it was the year that Joy was getting married, and I just happened to be on the internet, and a thing came across for British Airways. You got 100,000 British Airways miles with, I think it was $1,000 spend. Well, her wedding was going to be pretty pricey. And then I went and told my husband about it, tried to get him to do it. Him hawed around about it, and then the offer disappeared. And a few days later, when that offer came back, I grabbed it in his name too. So we ended up with two of those 100,000 British Airways miles with it was either a $1,000 or $2,000 spend, which was not really that much when, you're getting ready for a wedding. So yeah, that was one of my favorite big deals way back when.
Went so much further though at that time, because that would have been 15 years ago.
We did. We eventually went to Europe, went to London, enjoyed some time there. And I had a companion pass with it too. So that was kind of our reward for paying for Joy's wedding.
What kinds of things could 100,000 points do back then? Because now that's like maybe one-way business class to Asia on an average day if you find saver space.
I would have to go back and recalculate that. Honestly, we've still got a few of those points dangling over that are not spent yet. And that's been a long time. And I just kind of feed it with 1 or 2 points every now and then so they didn't expire. And now they're hanging on. So we've still got a few of those original British Airways miles.
So where in this timeline do the timeshares start coming into play?
2002.
What kicked that off?
My husband had retired from being a national president of an organization. And so we had never been on a vacation with just the two of us before. So I talked him into going on one that we had gotten in the mail, an offer from Hilton. So we went to Las Vegas and went to this little promotion. And of course, you do the normal thing. We're not buying. We're not. I know we're not buying. No way we're going to buy, They got to the end of that presentation and I thought, wow, we've never been able to take the kids on a vacation. And this would force us to do that. So because it would force us to do it, then we would get to begin spending family time and having those opportunities. So my husband says that at the end of that presentation, I looked at him and I said, I want this and there's no discussion. And so we actually had the money at the time. So we put down a credit card on it and turned around and paid it off right away. That was our first purchase. And since then, we've been to a number of different timeshare presentations with the goal of, did we get the best? We got to check these out, make sure we're happy with what we got, learn how to use it. Let's just see what the others are all about. And to this day, I wouldn't trade it for anything. We've gotten so much benefit out of it, and it's made family travel possible. And that was, had I known more about points and miles and how you could amass more and more back then, I probably would never have gotten it. But we didn't realize that at the time. But now we maximize it using the points and miles to help us get the kids there by flying and then doing some extra things.
If a similar opportunity came up in 2026 for somebody listening to this episode, would you recommend going down the timeshare route? And if so, why?
I think it would be iffy because if you're really into the points and miles world, you know how to make that work to be able to do it. And now that they've opened up that you can do Airbnb things and you can do homes with your points and miles, then maybe not. It just depends upon the family, the size. If you've got the money readily available and you want to make that investment, then just make sure you do it having the money up front, pay it with your credit cards, and then turn around and pay it off immediately. It's a personal decision. I'm glad that we have it because it works for us. I don't know that I would do it today, knowing all that I know now, but it can certainly work in a lot of situations.
Which situations are those where it works out, and which ones would you say it's not going to work out in that situation?
Well, when we took the kids and all the family to Hawaii one year, there were 14 of us, and we were able to use our timeshare to get 8 of them into a penthouse suite at the Hilton Hawaiian Village in the penthouse. So that worked out great. And then we used our Hilton points to get the extra rooms that we needed, which otherwise we would have been having to pay cash for it. So situations like that would be a way that you can do that and then use the miles to fly the family there. And so we ended up, oh my goodness, Joy, do you remember, was it $33,000 value for that trip? That would have been the cash price. And this does not include the figures for the penthouse suite that we had done. Excluding that with the $33,000, it cost us maybe $3,000-ish cash outlay. So it was phenomenal.
That's how I like to calculate stuff too, is I don't try to go for like what's the most free thing I can get, but if I have this much of a travel budget, how much can points and miles stretch that? Usually I find that 10x is pretty accurate. You mentioned you also love timeshare presentations and not necessarily just owning a timeshare. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
No, I haven't done nearly as many as Mom has, but I have a strict rule that if I pay, I don't go, just because we don't have the budget to really travel. So like if I can't make it mostly cover in points and miles, then I won't go. Also with that, like earning points and miles for my entire family to go on as many trips a year as we want to is just really hard sometimes. Like if you're just working on a realistic mom budget, right? So what I've learned is that for 2026 example, we have 2 timeshare presentations. They were targeted offers, one's from Hilton and one's from IHG. And what that's going to do is give us 2 additional trips in 2026 to where I just paid the fee, but once we show up, I'm getting all that cash back. So we get 3 free nights. We're going to use one of them to go to Gatlinburg and go back to Dollywood and kind of spend some time over there when it's not super crowded and crazy. And then we're going to use the other one to go to Vegas for just my husband and I. And these are trips like we wouldn't be able to take next year, but because of that timeshare presentation and not having to use any of my points that I've earned on extra hotel night, that's 6 extra nights of trips in 2026 that we get for just giving 2 hours of our time per trip.
For people who aren't familiar with how these presentations normally work, kind of walk us through, how do you get targeted for these once you go? What do you have to do? What do you have to kind of be alert about at these presentations? How does this whole system work?
You can find them online. You can just go to like HiltonGrandVacationClubs.com and you can grab an offer right there on the spot. A lot of the points and miles distributions like Points Guy, Upgraded Points, Award Wallet, they will put out in blogs when there are elevated offers for those. And those are ones anybody can grab. Another way you can get targeted is last year, I actually used points on a trip and we checked into the Hyatt Vacation Club at Pinion Point in Sedona. And when I checked in, they pulled me off to the side and they gave me an offer right there on the spot to come back in the future. You can use your points to stay at one of those locations and then get a future return trip. Another place is like if you go to Vegas or Orlando, they're literally everywhere. I mean, they're like at every little desk in every little mall. People will walk up to you in the lobbies of hotels or casinos and offer you these timeshare presentations. And it's really worth a shot if you have the time to spend or if you plan for that time to really do it, because you could continue like returning to Vegas and trying out different brands, and you never have to buy, but you can keep returning and keep getting like free trips to Vegas, because what you'll get is you may get free stays, you may get points, you will probably get like food vouchers or credits or things like that. We just got back from Gatlinburg. We went for fall break as a family. Mom ended up getting $400 worth of vouchers back from that timeshare presentation. So what happened is it covered a lot of our attractions. We used it to then turn around and buy our tickets to go do like Anakista and some of the other big tourist attractions there, and it covered those expenses. So there's so much that you can get back out of it. So even if you are paying like $199 to do the presentation, you will most likely get way more in that back in value.
What is the usual retail value of, let's say, a 3-night trip that you would get out of Hilton or IHG for one of these? If you're like, we got that for just hanging out for a couple of hours and listening to a sales pitch.
I really calculated that recently over the original one that we had done, the IHG that led into the Gatlinburg trip, and we stayed at the IHG in Sedona, Phoenix area. The value of those 3 nights there was $686. And I think we had paid like, I want to say $199 for that. And they turned around and gave us all of that money back in cash.
Retail value for the 3-night stay for the room, we'll just round up and say $700. And then in order for you to receive that, 2 people need to go to the timeshare presentation, which is usually, let's round and say about 2 hours. So we'll say like 4 hours worth of time to do that. So if you do 700 divided by 4, what is that, like $175 per person? So if you would say your time is worth less than $175 per hour, definitely worth doing it. If you're like, I should just work on sales or whatever and I make more than $175 an hour, that's kind of the trade-off with these. And also like how much your time on vacation is worth, because some people are like, oh, I don't want to give up 2 hours of a 3-day trip to listen to a sales pitch that I know I'm not going to buy.
We've done so many of them now that a lot of times they will just say, okay, you have to do 90 minutes. And sometimes they'll do 60 minutes with us, especially if we're doing repeated things with Hilton. They'll say, well, you're owners, so we'll do an update. We just need 60 minutes of your time. And they'll make it worth it. You stay 3 nights, you get your $99 back. The value of that is way more, and you've only got 60 minutes. So it's definitely worth it for us. And it's not something we necessarily seek out, and we balk at it, and then they sweeten the deal. So the more you hesitate, the more they often sweeten the deal for you.
Give us some examples of what they can sweeten the deal with.
Some companies will up the points or will reduce the fee that they charge you for that first thing. Instead of $249 or $199, it may come down to $99 and you still get the same thing you would have gotten otherwise. I know one time we were laying on a beach in Mexico, and this was years ago, not even looking for anything, just relaxing. And a guy came down the beach and offered us $700 to come to a promo. You kind of sit up at that one, you know. $700? Kidokas, tell us a little bit more about it. Well, we actually went and did it. We got the money, but before we got the money and before we got out of that presentation, which took way longer than we had told them we would do it, but they had taken us out onto a construction site because that's where they were building the new resort out there. And we were stuck. We had no way to get back. So, you know, what do you do? But back at that time, my husband was more like a football player, hefty, you know, and when he stood up, pushed his chair back, I'm telling you, he was ready to punch. We are done here. We are out of here. And they got the $700 for it. Now, that was the max. We've never gotten anything quite that much in cash back before. But most of them are very nice, and we're very kind. We're very courteous. And it turns out to be pretty good.
Okay, so for people who want to seek these out and they're like, okay, it's like you get a 3-night stay, you give up a couple hours. How are you still qualifying for these? Like, especially once you're an owner already, what are they still trying to sell you if you are already bought into the timeshare?
I think the people that are out there at those little kiosks that are trying to get you in, I think they must get paid to get people in. So they will tell you anything. They will twist you. They will say, it doesn't matter if you own already or if you own with another company, just give it a try. You might see something you like. And so after they wear you down and keep off sweetening the deal, you're like, okay, we go. So you go into the presentation and the guy says, what are you here for? Well, we came because your person said that they needed this sale today and we should come in here and that we might see something we like and you wouldn't be curious about it. So we're here and we're here to, you can tell us what you want to tell us. But the reality is that we already own and we're happy with what we have, but we're willing to listen. And that works out. A lot of times we just have a great conversation about something totally unrelated. And then they show us a price at the end. We say, it's nice to meet you. Goodbye.
Which hotel brands do you think have the best rewards or the best promotions for attending these types of presentations? Because pretty much every hotel will have them. Wyndham has them. Hyatt has them. Sometimes, oftentimes in Florida, Marriott, IHG, Hilton. So you can take your pick of whichever program that you like. But which one have you found gives the best promotions?
I think that Hilton has the best overall because they treat everybody the same. They're not going to offer one deal to you and a different deal for a better price to somebody else. They're consistent with what they offer. They're fair. They're very kind. They're very courteous. When you're John, you're John. They're not going to keep after you, drag it out, and make you stay. They take no for an answer, and you can move on with your day, and they're grateful you came in. Not so with some of the timeshares. They're not quite so good about that. In fact, they will really tell you what they think of you for coming in.
Which ones?
Oh, well, like Wyndham, like Mayan in Mexico, definitely, which we're done with them anyway. But it depends upon the representative sometimes that they will do that. Just be cautious. It's their job, and we're the recipients.
How would you advise people handle it if they're in a timeshare presentation and they're like, I really just want to get on with my day. It's been the 2 hours of allotted time. We really need to get out of here. How do you just make a presentation end where you're like, hey, we're not interested. We're going to go now, while still getting the thing that you want? Because you can't just leave 30 minutes in. You're not going to get your free stay.
We just say up front, here's what we own. We're happy with it. We're not buying today. We're not changing anything, but we know that we're here and we know that it's your time. So we will listen to whatever you have to say. Just know that at the bottom that we're not buying. And that's the way it is, especially in our age, So we go through that. And sometimes we had one agent or one representative who literally reached up, closed his laptop and said, okay, I don't like this job anyway. So let's talk about something different. And we had the most delightful time. We just sat there and just talked about a variety of things. He had some health issues going on. We compared notes and stuff like that. Sometimes it's been like spiritual things people get to talking about. And at the end of the day, it's like, okay, well, it's almost time. So I have to show you something. I have to show you something. Which, yeah, show us what you got to do. So he'll show us, he'll present us a price. And then we'll say, thank you, but no thanks. That's it.
Joy, do you also own a timeshare?
I don't, because I don't think my brothers want anything to do with the one my mom has. So I'm sure I'm going to inherit the Hilton one of these days. So I have not. I don't own one.
When you attend these different presentations, do you just start with, my mom owns one and I'm going to inherit it? Because more so, I'm wondering for everybody who doesn't own a timeshare presentation, has no intention of purchasing a timeshare presentation, but maybe would like to benefit from these different types of deals that you get in presentations, how you would advise them to approach these, especially if the calls are running really long.
Just from the very beginning, just be upfront and say, look, I get the value of timeshares and what they can provide for my family, but we are not going to purchase. We are only here for the freebies. Because if you give them any inkling of hope, you are going to be there way longer than 2 hours, and it's going to be really hard to get out of there, and they're going to be way more pushy. So just be very upfront and honest from the beginning. And once that 2-hour timer hits, you say, look, I promised you 2 hours of my time. It's now been 2 hours. Thank you so much for this opportunity. What else do we need to do so we can get on with our day? And then make sure that you get walked out. There's going to be like a little desk at the end of it where they walk you to. And at that desk is where you get all your freebies. So you want to make sure that you go to that checkout desk.
Do you still fill out the evaluation form at the end of each one? Yeah. Usually I will mention that. I haven't been to one of these timeshare presentations in a long time, but if it is running really, really over time, usually at that point, I will just say something like, hey, we made a deal. I would give you 90 minutes or 2 hours of whatever of my time. You have gone well over your side of the deal. I can't be convinced to go into any other deals with you today because you've already broken one deal. So I just want to fill out your evaluation form at this point, and we'd like to get our freebies and move on with our day. What else do we need to do? If you show that you kind of already know how these systems work, there's not much else they can do. And that they can't walk back the fact that they've already broken their end of the deal of the time allotment. So at that point, you kind of got them and you can just get your freebies. That being said, I have not been to one of these in many, many years. What's like the highest end hotel that you can get out of these? Because sometimes they're a little bit more mid-range or they're more apartment style. What's the most luxury level that you can get if you're like, I'm willing to sit through a timeshare presentation?
Oh, you can get penthouse suites that are magnificent in all places in the world. I mean,
like what?
It just depends upon how much you're willing to spend.
I would say Vegas would probably be one of the nicer places, right, Mom?
Yeah, we've been to some nice places there. We recently stayed at the Trump Hotel, and it was exquisite. No matter what the politics are, it was an exquisite hotel. And we walked out of there for like the taxes, and I think the taxes were like $12 or something. It was amazing in a 1-bedroom suite with the gorgeous view and the beautiful big bathrooms and everything. It was amazing to walk out of there for 3 nights and pay $12 or so,
Yeah. Any other examples that are like more international, or if somebody wanted to go to a beach destination, what's like the nicest type of hotel that you can get for sitting through a timeshare presentation?
Oh, wow. I remember years ago we did one in Spain, and the guy, when we showed up for the presentation, he said, look, let's just meet for coffee. And then we sat down and he said, I know you're not going to buy. So are you having a good time on your vacation? And I mean, literally about 5 minutes later, we got to leave. And we had a very nice room with those beautiful mosaics and all the Spanish stuff, and a nice condo room.
How would you advise somebody can increase their chances of having an experience like that? Because that's what really most people want. We don't want to buy a timeshare. We just want to get free stuff, get in, get out 5 minutes later, ideally. For some ways, since you've been through so many of these, how does somebody increase their chances of having that kind of experience?
Well, find out if you're going to be staying at a local hotel or if you're going to be actually staying on the property. And if you're staying on the actual resort property, then you're going to have a much better experience. Nicer rooms with all of the facilities there. So I think that's the key to it.
But more so, how does somebody improve their chances of only having to sit through a 5 or 10-minute conversation?
That's probably going to be next to impossible because that was a real fluke. We were shocked at the 5-minute thing. But, we've been excused within 15 or 20 minutes before just because we were up front and we know that that's what it is. We've not been denied gifts or anything. So it's kind of depending upon, there's really no rhyme or reason to it sometimes. It's just the way it works out. And the rapport that you have with the person who's presenting to you. I don't know if that's any help. It's just our experience.
Has there ever been a presentation where, due to clerical error or something, one of the freebies that was promised was missing? And if so, what do you do in that situation?
I actually had a piece of paper printed off that said, wait a minute, this is what we were promised, and pulled it out. And that way they can't deny it and they paid it.
That is a really good piece of advice, is before going into any of these, have some kind of confirmation email or something printed out and just be like, hey, just to confirm, this is what your rep at booth or whatever promises. Just want to confirm, is this actually what we're going to get? It seems a little bit too good to be true. They will confirm or deny all of those things. And that's probably good to confirm just at the beginning as well, so that at the end they're not like, oh, but you only get this, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Just confirm your terms. Have it in writing as well.
Yes, we had that. So last year we went to Vegas and we got stopped at one of the booths or whatever. And it was a Wyndham presentation. And they offered us like a future 3-night stay with a $400 food credit and a $200 casino credit and all this stuff. And we're like, well, sure, why not? We'll do it. The guy told me it was a 90-minute presentation. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. Can you put that in writing? Write this down for me. So we show up at the presentation and the lady says, okay, you're here for 2 hours, right? And I said, absolutely not. We're here for 90 minutes. That is what we were promised. Here's my paper. And it turns out like a lot of other people were told the exact same thing. And we ended up opting not to stay because we didn't have the full time for 2 hours for the presentation based on an attraction we were doing. But we did still get we still got our transportation to and from covered because it wasn't on a Wyndham property on the strip. It was a Wyndham property farther out. So we made sure that was still covered, but we did have to waive a lot of our other freebies just because we didn't go through with it and they had promised us 90 minutes and it wasn't. So definitely get it in writing.
That would be great if you got the 90 minutes in writing and then they were like, okay, we can adjust the presentations. Yeah, a lot of these, like, people will just make up whatever terms they need you to hear in order to get you funneled into the room. Confirm the terms.
Yes, get it in writing.
Any other tips that you have for people who want to get into attending timeshare presentations in order to get more free hotel stays, but they're just like, I hate sitting through sales presentations and I don't know if I want to do this?
We have, not often, but sometimes when you get through the end of the presentation and you keep saying, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. And then they bring someone else in to check you out and they offer you something and you say, no, thank you, no, thank you. Well, they'll eventually offer you a deal that you could stay for a week for like, I'm going to say like $1,500 or so in a 2-bedroom. And they'll show you a lot of different locations that it could be. And they're very nice locations and very nice resorts. And if you can get like a 2-bedroom at Hilton Hawaiian Village in one of those nice resorts there with that amount, for that amount of money, then that's pretty good. That's decent. So we will sometimes buy a deal like that to be able to share it with friends or to be able to share it with family. In that case, you will have to go through another presentation once you get there. But something like that is worth it to be offered, to have a better experience to see what their resort system is like. And we've done that with several different groups over the years.
If someone really wanted to own a timeshare presentation, mathematically and financially, does it ever make sense to buy one through these presentations rather than to just buy it through one of the many resale things where people are just clamoring to get rid of their timeshares?
The difference is that if you buy it through one of those resale things, normally you don't get into their system to be able to change points in and out with the different resorts in the system. If you buy it off of one of the resale things, it's typically like the old timeshare thing where you're buying one specific week in one specific location. That's basically the difference in it from what I've seen.
Because there are a lot of people who try so hard to get rid of their timeshares. Once they're in, they have very high maintenance fees oftentimes every year. So people will just give away their entire contract for you to take over the maintenance fees. I think we had another episode previously. Michelle Mojica has an entire business where she buys and sells these, where people will just offer up their timeshare. She'll take over the maintenance and then she'll resell them and package it up to somebody else who might want a cheap timeshare. So we had another podcast episode talking about the deeper finances of that, because the resale market on these can be very good. I just don't want anybody to ever buy these because they are pressured in a sales situation if you for some reason really, really want to own a timeshare. So for anybody who's like, I think it might financially make sense to own a timeshare property for whatever reason, there is a resale market, but I can be convinced, is there ever like mathematically and financially a good reason, assuming that you can get onto one on the resale market that has access to these different points exchanges on timeshare? I can probably be convinced, is there ever financially or mathematically a reason to purchase it in presentation?
I probably wouldn't at this point. I guess it could be if you've got a lot of money and you want a specific property. And if you want to go to Hawaii every single Christmas, then in a nice location, then you might want to buy it. But other than that, if you didn't have it, if you were struggling to have it, I wouldn't put yourself into debt for it.
It also, with timeshares, you are kind of locked in for like, I want to go every year. But let's say that you completely change your mind in 5 years from now. Points and miles are great and they have the flexibility where you can use them wherever within a particular loyalty program network. So that's where points and miles can really come into play. But I do agree that if you want to trade time for sitting through a presentation and get those freebies with timeshare presentations, there is an art to finding them, signing up for them, learning to say no so that you don't end up buying a timeshare. There's definitely an art and a science to that as well. If people want to learn more about your strategies for these, where can people find you to ask more questions?
You can find us on SavvyTravelMamas on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and that's MAMAS, Mamas, and that is where you can find us.
Perfect. Well, thank you both so much for joining us onto the show today and for teaching our audience a little bit about attending timeshare presentations and the cool things you can get from those.